The police arrived on the scene and were just horrified at what was happening. There was blood dripping on one of the plants. The police officer called for reinforcements and talked about there was a murder in the apartment complex. There was one survivor in the horrific tragedy, a boy who was completely covered in blood and crying. A whole year had passed since that incident. The boy had been texting on his phone with his aunt, who promised to sort things out with the school. The hero seemed to be upset by the support from his family. One of the standing men looked at the guy with disdain, and the other passengers looked at him the same way. The hero looked beaten, and it looked like he was being bullied. He sighed, as he was incredibly ashamed that he was causing his aunt so much trouble, having already changed 4 schools in a year. The guy's name was Baek Kongwon. He was born into an ordinary but good family, and lived an ordinary life. Then the incident that happened to him a year ago. No one knew who the killer was, and the case was never solved. After the tragedy, the hero was sitting in the corridor. He was taken by the hand of a woman. She was the only relative who volunteered to help him. The truth is that everything did not go well. The guy fell to his knees because his eye was very sick. He said that it was a hell of a pain. The doctor explained that examinations showed that there was nothing wrong with his eye, and it was probably due to mental disorders. The doctor also explained that the things Baek Kongwon sees are just hallucinations caused by a mental disorder. In fact, the protagonist thought it couldn't be that simple, but he didn't see hallucinations, but entities behind people's backs. Also on the guy's eye appeared a strange sign that only he could drive. The protagonist thought that his right eye was the place that the man touched before he died. Baek didn't realize when his eye would return to normal. It was like a curse. Kongwon was approached by a girl who interrupted his train of thought. The guy's eye activated, and he saw a scary creature in front of him, who was hugging the girl who introduced herself and told him where they had seen each other. The guy said hello, and the girl said it was no big deal, that he didn't remember her. She paid attention to how the hero looked and seemed to realize something. She apologized to the guy and asked permission to sit next to him. Baek wasn't against it at all and pointed to a place where she could sit. The protagonist decided to call the scary creatures phantoms. The protagonist was the only one who could see them, and these creatures stuck to people for reasons unknown to him. The protagonist asked how the girl was feeling, and she confessed that she had been feeling bad lately. She thought it was because of exams, but the hero knew that phantoms draw life force from their victims. Earlier, the hero was greeted by his new doctor. He told him that the previous doctor who had seen the phantom had fallen ill and later had an accident. The hero recalled that then saw the phantom, which most likely caused the death of the doctor. The protagonist decided to try to interact with the monster. Touching, suddenly something happened, and the finger of the hero was wounded, which the girl was very frightened. Baek asked her not to scream. He explained that he was perfectly fine and just put a band-aid on it. So far, the protagonist could only see phantoms, because even touching them hurt him. The protagonist was angry at the creature, as it was laughing. The girl said that she noticed an unpleasant thing, namely that Baek gets hurt very easily. She recalled that even at school it was the same. Back then, the classmates were discussing the main character and the situation he was in. While they were discussing the guy behind his back, the girl seemed worried. When Baek heard that he was the killer, he was angry and attacked one of the guys. The others immediately started to gather around to watch the fight. Looking at the main character, who was covered in blood, they called him crazy. The girl remembered that after the incident the protagonist had changed schools, and she was a witness. She said that the protagonist was injured and it was his blood, while the guy was only slightly bruised. The girl tried to explain everything to the teacher, but at that moment the parents started rioting and crowding, so he asked the girl not to interfere. She apologized to the protagonist for not being able to tell the truth at that time. The guy turned to Xiao. He thanked the girl with a very satisfied face. He explained that, well, he didn't need to apologize. Rather, he needed to be grateful for her kindness. The guy explained that good people shouldn't blame themselves. He said that the girl shouldn't worry, and he would be fine. The protagonist tried his best to find a way to destroy the phantoms, but so far only he had been injured. Everyone around him recognized him, and he only worried about his aunt, who always apologized for his actions. The guy even thought about just closing his eye and pretending not to notice anything, since that was how he could start living a normal life. He had decided a long time ago that he wanted to live his life as a normal person. The subway arrived at one of the stations. The girl agreed with the words of Peck. At that time in the car came a man on which was a terrifying phantom, and the girl said that she was always ready to help the hero. The protagonist that time was fully formed on the man who walked in. He had never seen a phantom of this size, but he knew it was not good. The protagonist decided to leave urgently and called the girl after him. She didn't react in time, so the hero shouted that they should get out of here. At that time the doors slammed very quickly. People complained that it happened too fast, and they did not have time to get out. It turned out that all the doors to the car were closed. At that time the guy did not know what to do. Because the doors were closed, he was thinking about a plan of action. The others did not see the phantom. The main character was sure that the phantom was trying to trap all the people. People didn't understand why they didn't move since the doors were closed. At that time, the phantom started to spread in the car. One of the men shouted on the phone that he would be late because of the subway breakdown. A new phantom began to appear on the back of his head, so he dropped his phone. It appeared that the phantom began to devour the people who were in the car. Others watched as the man got sick. A little while later the same phantom seeds started to fall on other people as well. After that they just fell to the ground, which scared others. Panic started, and the protagonist along with the girl took a safe place. The protagonist realized that people were not just unconscious, but that the phantom was going to suck out all the life force of these people. The hero has never seen such phantoms. If this continues in a closed car, even he may die. So the guy began to think about a plan of action, and he came to use the analog, and as soon as he turned to the girl was horrified, as the phantom that sucked her strength so much scared that it shrank to a tiny size. The protagonist heard the voice of a child. It was a boy who was crying, and did not understand what happened to his mom. People were afraid to go there, as they thought that what was happening was a case of some disease. At that time the boy tried to wake up his mom and cried. The hero realized that he had no sense to hurry, and no way to resist the phantom. He realized that even his classmate cannot save, because he realized that in any case they all die. Even if they didn't, he decided to be ordinary for Auntie's sake. The guy couldn't help himself when he saw that nothing was falling on the boy, so he jumped up and saved him. He decided to forget about being ordinary, and do what he thought was right. The hero asked if the boy was all right. The kid couldn't help himself and hugged Peck. The hero decided to just avoid the phantom and take the boy to safety. At that time, the enemy was already looking at the protagonist who felt it. The enemy started attacking the kid with a huge amount of spikes. The protagonist realized that he had no time to dodge. At that time a girl ran out of the crowd, who was holding black amulets in her hands. She began to say a spell, namely that the black amulets would be destroyed. After she got close to the enemy's attack she dispelled it. She looked confidently towards the phantom. At the time the guy seemed to have retreated. The girl grudgingly scared. She turned around and asked if she had hit it. The hero, however, was surprised that the girl was also able to see phantoms. At that time the enemy prepared the next attack, and it seemed that the girl did not have time to react to it, and she was saved by amulets. The hero realized that in fact the girl can't see anything. The protagonist gave the boy to his classmate and went to the rescue. He noticed that more and more people were losing consciousness. At that time, the girl, because of her talismans, has not yet been caught by the phantom. The enemy began to prepare his attack. The hero shouted to the girl to be careful and told her about the direction of the blow. She heard the information, and by following the hero's advice, she was able to repel the monster's strike. The attack began to develop, and it seemed that the girl began to feel something. She realized that she had just hit something and turned to the hero and asked if he was able to see the phantom. The guy explained that yes, in fact he was able to see it. The girl seemed incredibly pleased. She said that she had managed to find a real treasure. The girl shouted the word sword and a weapon began to appear in her hand. She grabbed the blade and stood in a fighting stance and asked where the monster was now. She explained that the hero must tell the location of the entity, and then she could kill it. She explained that the entity was the thing that was killing people. The hero looked at the phantom and realized that the girl meant him. The guy gave up his fist and shouted that straight. He began to explain that the enemy is above the man in green closer to the ceiling, and the girl rushed there without thinking at all. She activated the spiritual signal and in one strong movement cut the enemy in two, and making a serious look asked how the monster her hidden attack. Thanks to the girl's help the entity started to disappear. The protagonist assumed that the girl didn't see entities at all. Suddenly the guy's face changed, and he started to rejoice as the phantom started to disappear. The girl seemed unable to contain her excitement either. She shrieked with joy that she hadn't felt this way in a long time. The boy was also surprised that she was able to kill phantoms. The hero could not understand why the girl had powers, but she came close to him, which confused the guy, and then he fell on the seat. She asked Beck's name, and he introduced himself. She called herself Yu Huanjan and said that they needed to clarify two things. She explained that what the hero sees is not a phantom but inanimate. Then she put a blade next to the guy's head and said that he should cooperate with her and be her eyes. Otherwise she would have to gouge out his eyes and take them for herself. Back in the past, Peck yelled at the man and questioned what happened. He didn't understand why his mom and dad died. At that time the guy with white hair confessed that it was him. After that the hero saw despair in his eyes. The man confessed that he killed the guy's parents. At that time Beck couldn't believe that the white-haired man was capable of it. At that time the guy grabbed him by the head and pressed him to himself and said that the hero should understand that now he hears the truth, and asked him to realize everything that happened. He confessed that he saw with his own eyes how people's flesh was torn. He showed the knife with which he cut off their lives. It was for this reason that the man asked Peck to confess. Putting the knife in the hero's hands, he asked if Peck hated him. It seemed that the protagonist was in a bad state. The guy understood the condition of the hero. So with the words that this is the last time he helps, he took hold of the protagonist's hands and plunged the knife. Beck woke up about a terrible dream from the past. Around him was a huge number of wounded people and doctors. He just sat there holding his head because of this dream. A man came up to the hero, who said hello and expressed his joy that Beck finally woke up. The protagonist did not understand who the man was, but he confessed that his name was Wang and he was a watcher. The protagonist didn't know what watcher meant, and the man explained that a watcher is someone who doesn't see what ordinary people see. Beck immediately thought of his ability to see phantoms. The man said he was waiting for the hero to dive in and ask him some questions. When asked if the guy remembers how he lost consciousness, he thought for a moment. A moment later his face changed because just 30 minutes not held in the carriage, she threatened to gouge out his eyes and take them for herself. The hero was startled by this woman's terrifying smile. It was the first time he had ever seen a person capable of such a thing. The hero seemed to want to reply something, but shouts were heard that the girl had abandoned someone. A man began to enter the carriage, and the woman complained that he had found her too quickly. She apologized to the protagonist and delivered a punch right on the neck to make Beck unconscious. A little while later, the man showed a video of the girl knocking out Beck. He began to recount the events that happened and asked if she had any excuse. She seemed deep in thought. The girl said it wasn't very appropriate to tell her off in front of a stranger. The man reminded her that she had told her about the otherworlders and knocked out the main character. At that point, the girl behind her back started yelling for her to tell. She explained that if her partner confessed, the punishment would not be severe. Then she started to tell about all the mistakes of the girl, which was a burden on her. The girl in the cap looked mad and said that her partner had a lot of courage. The man asked the girl to calm down, but she apologized and explained that she was just mad. She grabbed the girl in a chokehold and started yelling for all her transgressions. The protagonist wondered if the girls in front of him were dead. These girls were members of the government's special division, and their watchers always helped them. The protagonist asked if they could see the inanimate, and the man explained that only the dead could see them. The hero suggested that you can only become dead if you see the inanimate. The hero assumed that the girl had asked to become her eyes to be fully dead. Now it was clear to the group member. He assumed that the girl wanted to hide the main character and his abilities. She introduced herself as Mumu and asked for the guy's name. Peck introduced himself to her. Mumu asked if the hero could see inanimate things. He confessed that he could, and the girl called the guy her circulation. The hero said that he was in the hospital. The hero said that the world is full of strange things and situations that defy logic. For this reason, the protagonist was not at all opposed to cooperate. It seems that the girl was surprised by such an editorial. She decided to ask the last question about Pak's age. He said that he was only 15 years old. The girl was very sorry, because the protagonist had only a year left. The guy did not seem to understand what she was talking about, but after her words Mumu began to call for the fetters, which pinned the uncomprehending protagonist to the ground. The protagonist seemed to be bound by an invisible entity. She told him that she would not tell anything to a normal person and would now erase Peck's memory. She said that the ability to see the phantoms of the hero will be sealed. He was not going to give up, although he promised to live a normal life, but he could not forget what happened. The guy called such a complete delusion, and his eye was active. Then the eye began to emit energy. The girl seemed surprised and intervened her partner, who put a gun to the neck of Mumu and said that she was not weak, and asked not to touch the protagonist. The girl was very angry with her partner, at which time a man intervened and asked everyone to stop. He explained that they shouldn't get together, and that the hero was special, so he would report on him. The man began to explain to the girl that she was not true because she was trying to hide the guy from them. He explained that in order to invite someone to the team you have to work. She made a serious look, and looking next to the main character apologized for her behavior. The guys were surprised that she called the threat to poke her eyes out a joke, while the girl said that if Beck didn't mind, she would like him to join her team. She was waiting for a response to her proposal. While Beck didn't seem to understand, the girl smiled and waited for a response. The scene was interrupted by a sound. They turned around and Mumu and the man were on their phones. It turned out that it was an urgent mission, and Mumu asked the hero and the girl to stay here. The man reported that in 15 minutes they would arrive at the place. The protagonist heard that the incident was on Busan and stood up and asked if he heard the location correctly. Mumu didn't understand what Beck wanted from her. At that time the guy made a gloomy look and said that his aunt lives in that exact location. The hero immediately started calling his aunt, but there was no answer, even though she should be at home. The guy was incredibly worried about his aunt. At that time in the house where she lived, the phone sounded in the whole room. It was bloody, and only the inscription that the call was coming from his favorite Kong one was visible. Exactly a year ago in the interrogation room, a man showed a picture of the hero's younger brother, who was adopted, and asked if their information was correct. Beck seemed unable to answer anything, but after a moment, he confirmed the law enforcer's information. They clarified if they were correct that upon returning home, the hero saw his parents dead, and his brother forced him to kill himself. Beck confirmed the information the officers had. They looked at each other and seemed to be thinking about something. One of the men shouted that this was impossible. He explained that they couldn't find the murder weapon, and the wounds were definitely not from a knife. He explained that the hero's brother had died of cardiac arrest, but there was no fatal wound. The protagonist seemed terrified. The staff was very concerned about Peck's psychological state. The guy jumped up. He couldn't understand how his brother could die before his parents. He was sure that it was the protagonist who killed him. At that time, the police said that there was no suspicion on him. The protagonist also needed to undergo a course of psychotherapy. In the present, Beck begged people to take him with them, as his aunt was washing in that place. The girl explained that the protagonist would be of no use. The guy seemed not to know what to say. He remembered how his aunt held his hand and supported him in every possible way during the difficult period. Beck told her that his aunt was the only one left, and begged her to let him go with them. The girl seemed touched, but she actually had the idea of going altogether. She was told that this was nonsense, but the girl explained that no danger could befall the hero with her. He grabbed Peck's hand and said that if they were not taken they would go there themselves. The hero looked in the direction of the girl, who was incredibly confident. On the roof of the car was working blinker. Even around this transport heard a disgruntled cry. It was Mumu, who complained about the situation. At that time Beck sincerely thanked the girl. She looked at him and said that there was nothing to thank her for, and since the guy wanted it, he had better think about the offer she made him. Mumu advised him not to agree to the hothead, because fighting inanimate things is not child's play. She gave an example of a paper building where people were disappearing, but no matter how much they investigated, they couldn't find any clues. She called it the real home of the cannibal. The police noticed a car pulling up to the place. The man got off, and the officer tried to stop him, because he thought he was an intruder. At that time, the man showed his badge and explained that they had been sent by the top brass. Upon seeing the badge, the police officer's reaction changed a lot. He started talking to the man in a courteous manner and reporting the situation. People could be heard saying that everyone had been evacuated. The man asked how things were in the place, and she said that it was incredibly bad, because the whole building was saturated with negative energy. She asked if the hero could see what she was seeing, and he said yes. This energy made the guy afraid, but he immediately tried to calm himself down. He decided to follow the people. He was going to make sure that his aunt was safe. As soon as he entered the building, everything around him started to change. Everything became red like blood, and it felt like he was standing in a pool of blood. The protagonist was in panic. It seemed that he was going to go crazy, but he was brought to his senses by the touch of a man. He told the hero to calm down, because this is not the same house in which he was a year ago. He explained that it was just an illusion to scare people. The structure of the building had changed because the stairs were gone, and there were only 2 elevators with inscriptions. The girl seemed worried. She asked what had happened to Peck, who looked quite horrible. The man explained the situation and said he would take the main character out now, but suddenly his face changed, for the door back was very far away considering they were standing still. Mumu shouted to the guys that the enemy was coming. The elevator started to make a loud noise. A moment later, the doors of each elevator started to open, and a very strong aura started to emanate from there. The guys covered themselves with their hand to protect themselves from the airflow, but instantly they moved to another place, which was actually those elevators. The girls reported to the man that they were in the elevator. He explained that they were also in the elevator. One of the oddities of the girls' elevator was that they could only go up, but the men's elevator only had one down button. There is no vocal floor in this house, so the monster is affecting the space. Mumu seemed to understand the information and kicked the elevator wall. She asked the protagonist which apartment his aunt lives in. She expressed her displeasure because the protagonist was useless, and told him to do something about it. She hinted that Peck still had someone to save, and the protagonist's condition had improved a lot. The guy called out room number 403. Mumu smiled at that, and pressed the elevator button, and the hero did the same. The girl said they would see each other in room 403. After the death of his parents, the guy could not sleep for a long time. At night the pain was eating him from the inside. It was in such terrible moments the guy was saved by his aunt. She always supported the hero, giving him strength. The elevator began its movement down. The hero and the man waited for the arrival at the place. The number 0 was visible on the tablet, and the elevator doors began to open. They immediately looked at what was behind them, and the guy's look seemed to be frightened. He almost screamed, but the man was able to stop him in time. The place actually had a horrible smell, and there was a huge amount of dead bodies of people. The man began to examine the bodies of people. Most of them were dead, and in some of them, even though there was some life left in them, there was no way to save them. The hero asked what the life particle was, and the man explained that it was the energy of a living soul. He explained that all have this energy from birth. The energy of life and death are part of the soul. There was a balance between life and death, and the life energy decreases with time, and once the death energy wins, the soul leaves the body, and it simply dies. Monsters need life energy to exist, and people who can't see them are easy targets. At that time, their job is to kill the monsters who want to satiate themselves with human energy. The guys bowed to the corpses that they would go to heaven. Looking at the corpses of these people, the protagonist began to worry even more about his aunt. The man offered to go look for apartment 403 and asked when the aunt was last in touch. Suddenly from the corner, energy began to appear. They were monsters, which immediately after the appearance went to attack the guys. The hero told the man that the monsters had arrived, and that there were so many of them. The guy seemed not to know what to do. Since the man was not dead, it will be impossible to get through this crowd of monsters. The man told the hero not to worry, and asked the location of the enemies. He explained that every caretaker was a dead one who had retired. He drew his weapon and said he would deal with it now. At that time, Mumu was revealing the location of the enemies, and the girl was chopping them down with her katana. Mumu said that they managed to clear the floor, but then a monster appeared in front of her saying that she would make a very good meal. The girl was incredibly angry and punched the monster. The girl thought about the fact that the elevators were not very different from each other. She was sure that there was no monster on that floor. She suggested taking the stairs to eventually get to the main enemy. She didn't hear the girl's response. She started yelling at the girl, who was incredibly upset that she didn't get to be on the same team with the main character. She said that if they had been together, the hero would have saved the beauty at the critical moment. She was sure that after such a thing, they would have definitely become partners. She began to talk about how things happen like that on TV. Mumu wondered why the girl was so obsessed with Peck. She explained that most people lose the ability to see monsters at 16. She also added that the hero is now an ordinary mortal unable to use magic. Mumu also started to talk about a case where the protagonist was even a suspect, but the girl stopped her, because even she couldn't see monsters. She wasn't defective, that's why she needed the protagonist. Mumu seemed to think about something and exhaled resigned to the girl's opinion. She said that she should be careful because the protagonist is not simple. She said that it felt like the protagonist was a puppet that was being pulled by strings, only when the strings broke. Suddenly a green energy flew out that interrupted Mumu. The energy exploded like a firework. It was a signal from the man who was chopping the monsters with his weapon. He looked incredibly strong and confident, which surprised the protagonist. It was the first time he had seen someone so strong. He realized that there was nothing he could do to help, barring a few clues as to the whereabouts of the enemies. It was the strength of the caretaker. At that time the man noticed something, namely the doors to room 403, which were open. The girls arrived on the scene. They decided to hurry into the room to make sure the aunt was intact. At that time Beck seemed to wonder if they had missed something. Mumu suggested to check inside. At that time he remembered that the monster has the power of space and asked if it was really that apartment, and a huge monster mouth appeared. The guys reacted instantly. Mumu set her hand forward and used the call. The protagonist and the girl started to be sucked in, and only his jacket was left. Mumu was enraged, for they had been tricked by the monster. At that time, the hero's hand was trembling. He heard the voice of the girl, who called him by name. A greenhouse began to come over him. The girl asked to explain whether they see the same thing. At that time in front of the guy was a huge monster with a human face, which addressed to Peck by name, which very frightened him, because in front of him was the face of his aunt. He still could not calm down, because his aunt kept calling his name. His breathing was very fast in panic. The girl tried to bring him to his senses that he would answer her question. But the guy saw in front of him only a monster with the shape of his aunt, which still creepily continued to call his name, which led the hero to panic. Beck could not do anything at all at that time. The girl assumed that they see the same thing, and called this illusion terrible. She used her talismans to attack the enemy and hit the ant's face. After such an attack, the monster didn't die, but started screaming with all its might. The hero thought it was his kin and wanted to approach. The girl grabbed the guy's face and asked him to look at it carefully, as he couldn't be fooled. She said that if the hero looked carefully, he would be able to see. The guy closed his eyes and decided to follow this advice, and opened his supernatural eye. Then the illusion began to collapse, and they were back in the room. The hero was surprised, because there was a monster in the living room, and told the girl about it. She started to run in the direction the guy explained. She took out her talismans and swung to make an attack. The monster got worried, and after a moment, he hid in the wall. The girl was unable to kill the enemy, and the guy said that he got into the wall. The hero realized that he should not let his guard down, as they could be attacked at any moment. The girl was very happy to pull the hero's sweater, as she saw her aunt lying on the steps. The guy instantly ran in her direction. It turned out that the woman was alive, only slightly wounded and unconscious. She was sleeping soundly, and the boy could finally calm down because she was alive. The girl said that the others would be coming soon, but for now she would be on guard. She told him not to worry, because she could always stand up for herself. Meanwhile, in another part of the building, Mumu was holding an artifact and complaining that there was no answer. The man explained that the apartment was empty, but it didn't exactly fit her aunt's description. There was a completely different family living in that apartment, and that apartment turned out to be a fake. Mumu tapped her hand. She was angry, as this spatial dimension was very disturbing. She explained that they couldn't find each other, and it was useless to search the apartments. She suggested that as soon as they get close to each other, the guys are transported to another part of the building. She said that they can't sit still. I have to save the other survivors. The man said he understood roughly what the monster's plan was. He assumed that the monster wasn't trying to split them up to kill one by one. He said it was more like watching and looking for a target to kill. He was sure there was a specific target. At that time, the hero finished applying bandages to his aunt's wound. He thought deeply about what had happened in the past. He was afraid that if he was a little late, the events might repeat themselves. At that time, a ring had been placed on the woman's hand, and she woke up, which pleased the protagonist. Auntie didn't recognize the guy, which made his eyes blurred. She asked why the guy called her that, which made Peck's eyes glaze over. She didn't understand what was going on, and what unknown people forgot in her house. The hero began to talk hysterically about himself. He did not believe that he could be so easily forgotten. She looked at the guy and said that she definitely does not know him at all. The heart and warm memories of his aunt began to crumble. Now the only person from his family forgot who he was, and this caused a huge surge of painful emotions. The protagonist remembered what happened in the past. When his brother said that he cannot without his family, he said that he cannot tolerate the hero and promised to give him hope. And after the illusion is dissolved, because it is all a lie, the hero will definitely want to find him and take revenge in hell, which will wait for the hero after death. At that time, there was a girl standing near the bar who made a seal with her hands and summoned talismans. She began to set up a barrier. The talismans around her began to move and placed in different places, creating a barrier. It should be enough for a certain time. It would be enough to hold back the monsters for a while. Supporting such a barrier was exhausting for the girl, but there was no choice, as the hero was not able to fight. She looked in his direction, and remembered him telling her that he only had one close person left. She, on the other hand, thought about how she didn't deserve to have even one loved one. At that time, the aunt stood up and walked towards the girl. She asked her what she was doing in her house. The girl grabbed her aunt's hand and excitedly began to tell her that she and her nephew would be partners in the future and many other things. She didn't understand anything at the time. She explained that she didn't know what they were talking about. Leaving, she was going to call security and call the parents. She started looking for her phone. At that time, she didn't understand what was going on. She read that she missed a lot of calls from her beloved Peck, but she couldn't remember. The girl asked if she knew the hero, and the girl took her head and started shouting that she didn't know the guys at all. The girl, after these words, seemed to change in her face, and then she paid attention to Peck, who was quite upset. The guy thought about the fact that after the death of his brother he felt nothing. After the funeral, everyone was worried about the condition of the guy. They tried to support him in every possible way. He thanked for the help with the organization of the funeral. They said that they were obliged to help with such a grief. Also assumed that the hero came to see his brother for the last time. At that time, the protagonist looked at the dead brother's body without any emotions. Behind his back, people were discussing how long it took to bury the hero's brother. At that time, he was asked if he was a relative, and said that it was time to start cremation. His brother's coffin began to move into the chamber. Then the flames rose. The hero thought that he did not come to say goodbye to his brother, but to make sure that he was definitely dead. Later, Beck said goodbye to everyone. It was at that moment the hero said that his aunt was waiting for him. They left together, and the woman's ring seemed to have some effect on the guy. The others didn't understand because there was no aunt. He was very happy with his aunt. He was ready to do anything for her. The main character did not understand why all this happened. He even accepted the fact that he was considered crazy. Even with the slander in his address, Beck accepted. For him, the most important thing was that the only person he cared about was safe. But now he realized that it was all a lie. Suddenly there was an energy that knocked the phone out of the woman's hands, and the girl was worried that it was bad. She felt that the monster's attack had gotten stronger, and the barter wouldn't last long. The barrier broke and the girl was able to save her aunt from being hit at the last moment. She stood up to protect her. She didn't have time to save the protagonist and was worried. At that time, the protagonist was sitting on his knees with his hand outstretched. He was holding back the monster's attack with one hand and assumed that it was all done to find him, as he had his brother's eye. After these words, the monster became visible, which scared the woman very much. At that time, the girl was shocked that she could see the monster. She could not understand why she could see it. How are they, ordinary people, able to see the inanimate? At that time, the protagonist said that the enemy would not escape, and clenched his fist. He was incredibly angry and said that he would send the monster back to hell. He continued to clench his hand, but then a girl appeared, who was ready to strike. She managed to attack the enemy, after which he began to disintegrate, and the hero only stood with a bloody hand. The girl looked in the direction of the guy. He was lying down and holding on to his wounded arm. She wanted to say something, but the hero interrupted her and said that they would be partners, but he had one condition. The hero said that no matter what he had to do, he would definitely protect the girl, no matter what it cost him. After a while on the street, the police cordoned off a building and a woman was screaming that she saw a monster. I said it was very scary, and no one believes her. She was approached by a man who asked her if she was scared of the monster. This elicited a logical reaction, and that she was scared is normal. The man touched the woman's forehead and told her not to worry and to forget everything. He told her to forget the terrible memories. After a while, Mumu and the man stood near the building. They did not speak and stood leaning against the wall. Mumu interrupted the silence, asking if the man would take care of everything. The man said yes, and told her that there were few people like that man. The girl thought it was wrong to erase people's memories. She looked in the direction where the man was standing and asked if he had finished. He said he had done his job and asked for a full report later. The bell on his body started to move and make a ringing sound. He reacted instantly. It was a small monster that was afraid of the sun, and the man used it to see if the right people could see the monsters. He also explained that this inanimate thing would not hurt anyone as it was homegrown. The girl was surprised, as the man had not seen the creature, but the man said he was quite comfortable. The man explained that he communicates with it with the help of a bell, and because the monster is inferior, even the sun harms it. The man praised the creature who was pulling his hair right now. The man said he was very disturbed by the woman, and other instances where people are able to see inanimate beings for a while. He couldn't understand why this was happening, and asked if Mumu had any clues. She, on the other hand, seemed to be deep in thought. Exactly 40 minutes ago, the girl had begged from her. She had asked to hide the protagonist from the caretaker. She said they wouldn't be long and the mentor would demand a report. Mumu was shocked that the girl's mentor would arrive as well. Mumu explained that she herself had not encountered the monster, and it was Huajan. The man was surprised as he knew she was from the Tu family. He wanted to call the girl defective, but Mumu's look stopped him. He apologized and also expressed his desire to visit the report. Mumu said she would write the report instead of the girl and show it to the man. There was an awkward silence between them, interrupted by the man who started to say goodbye to the guys. Finally, the masked guy started to leave, and they could finally relax. Mumu knew that she couldn't cover for Huanzhan for the rest of her life, but she also said that since her friend had asked for help, she was obligated to help. The man seemed very happy to hear such words. Mumu didn't understand what the punishment would be since the upper class had no power over civilians. The girl had been promised punishment in the past. The man began to explain that the girl was too naughty and was causing a lot of trouble, which was the reason why he decided to scare her. As the masked man walked through the sunlight, he seemed to be thinking deeply about the moment he touched the woman. Then the ring on her hand began to fade, and eventually just disappeared, which the guy noticed right away. He realized that it was a technique to tamper with the memories of living people. He has a good ability, so he should have definitely noticed it. At that time the city was noisy. There was a huge number of people crossing the road at the traffic lights. They were walking, and it seemed a strange man with ashy hair passed by. The kid seemed to notice his mother's friend, and letting go of the woman's hand started running in that direction, passing through this guy with gray hair. The boy turned back, causing his legs to switch, and he fell straight to the pavement. The mother started to support her son, saying that he shouldn't run. At that time the boy could not take his eyes off one point. He saw a guy in front of him, who gestured that he should not tell anyone anything. Then it started to release a huge amount of aura, which was incredibly creepy and very much scared the child. The boy hugged his uncomprehending mom. The man with dyed hair seemed surprised. He explained that he couldn't even imagine that the guy was someone who liked to scare children. The guy's gaze was very cold. It felt like he was looking into his very soul. He explained that it was dangerous to run on the road. While the man pointed his finger at him and addressed him as a newcomer, he explained that they were dead, and they needed to feed on people, not to play nice. He explained to the hero's brother that it had only been a year since his death, but it was time to remember. The boy began to talk about how the man was indeed much older, and his experience should be respected. The man seemed proud of himself. He didn't understand why hearing such nice words made him feel like he was being teased. The man explained that he had received orders to check on the guy. At that time people came to the table, and since they didn't see the guys, they took the cup and threw it in the trash, proud of how they cared for the earth. At that time the man's look turned dark. He instantly attacked one of the people, which made some things fall, and his friend was just terrified, because the guy seemed to be strangled by something invisible. The man continued to strangle the insolent guy. He was incredibly angry that his place was taken away by people. He took the guy's hand and reminded him that he had taken his drink without asking and threw it away. After his words, he broke that hand. The guy started screaming like hell in pain. At that time, the man was angry and said he wasn't done. Then he started pulling the life energy from the guy's body. Pac's brother was watching. He asked if they were late for the trials at this rate. The man looked in that direction with a creepy look. The guy smiled and waited for an answer. Then the man let go of the man's body and said that they were not late and it was time for them to move out. The man's friend started calling the ambulance, trying to explain what had happened. The man started to say that they didn't fulfill the plan in this zone. The guy asked. He thought it was because of the caretakers, but it only made the man laugh, because in his opinion the caretakers are just people playing heroes and killing inanimate things. He explained that the boy would not interfere and let the caretakers play. The hero's brother paid attention to the dead birds. They continued their movement. The man explained that the guy's first task would probably be to create a nest. They arrived at the place, and the man explained the conditions of the test, namely to get rid of the uncontrollable thing inside. There was a huge blob of energy in that place. The man explained that it was the past junior who had become like that under the influence of the nest. The man also said not to look at the monster like that, because he liked it. Only a shell remained of the man, and his consciousness had been destroyed. The man had been with the man for 20 years. The man explained that if the guy didn't make it in 3 hours, he would die with the monster. The man started to leave for the store, and said the new guy couldn't leave. The guy said that the man would wait for him for a while. He didn't understand what the hero's brother was talking about. The guy explained that he could do it quickly. The monster did not stand still, and headed towards the guy, who said he also wanted to go to the store. At that time, in one of the buildings, a woman complained that the girl had a master's habit of picking up people. She explained that she would be going through menopause soon, and the girl had brought some guy and wanted to make a partner out of him. The girl wasted no opportunity in saying that the woman would always remain so bright and colorful. It seemed to work, and the woman said that for a long time her lips would remain sweet, but he realized that the girl was trying to hide something and asked him to tell. She called the woman the wisest. The woman began to tell about how when she was treating the guy she noticed that his right eye was from a dead man. She explained that this was rare, even more like a legend. She explained that all experiments to implant the eye had ended in death, but that the hero was alive and could use it. She explained that although physically this eye is a guy's eye, but spiritually it is something connected with death. That's why they called it the eye of the dead. She was sure that the hero was capable of a lot of things, but she could hardly give an answer, as there were no records. The girl seemed to be thinking about something. She started to talk about a case when during a fight she started to see a ghost, along with a normal person. The woman was surprised by this ability, and said that the girl was doing the right thing and trying to hide it. If word of this got out, the researchers wouldn't give it a chance to live. The woman assumed that they were not partners yet, and the girl said that she had brought the guy here of her own free will, and she didn't want him to be a test subject. The girl also asked that the guy be more free. The woman was surprised because before the girl was reckless, and now she cared for her partner so much. She was glad to see the child growing up. The girl asked where the minnow was, but the woman herself didn't know the answer. The woman began to ponder, and they were interrupted by a knock on the door. The children came inside. They were the ones helping to care for the wounded hero. One of the girls shouted that the wounded protagonist was being beaten at that very moment. Such news shocked the girls. They asked again, and it turns out another man molested the hero. After hearing this, they were very shocked. At that time, the protagonist was accosted by a man who said that he was not allowed to be Hwanjun's partner. He explained that the protagonist was not welcome and asked him to leave. This kind of thing only annoyed the guy. The guy asked how they were going to buy tea. You can't see them. The man said it was very simple, and they should just wait. The cashier was serving the customers, After she heard the order of tea with milk, she started to prepare it. After it was ready, she put it on the table, and the man took the glass and left more money than necessary. The older man gave the newcomer the tea and said he would wait for the next one. At that time, the girl couldn't understand where the money came from, and the tea disappeared. It had been a whole 4 hours since the man had been waiting for his tea. He was very upset that no one was taking the tea he wanted. The guy decided to take pity on the man and decided to give it a try. He moved towards the cashier and before apologizing touched her hand. Then something started to happen. The girl's memories changed, and she started typing the name of the tea. The guy gave his eldest the hour he wanted, and the man was incredibly happy about it. At that time in the room where the hero was lying, a guy was pestering him. He explained that he wasn't welcome at all and advised him to leave. At the time, Beck didn't seem to react at all. He pointed his finger at the guy's shoes and said it was indecent. The hero asked if the guy was a monkey and suggested he take off his shoes. Beck usually never threw around such phrases, but considering what had happened, he was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And when this one-cell creature appeared in front of him, he had only one thought, that it should get as far away from him as possible. To the hero's surprise, the guy just wondered how he knew his nickname was Monkey. It seemed to shock Pack. At that time, people tried to enter the room. The girl could not open the door. The woman assumed that it was the action of the amulet that was used on the door. At that time, the guy heard the girl's voice and shone. The girl seemed to be worried about the hero. The girl did not understand what was going on. She asked Lewin to open the door. He refused and said that he would never accept the fact that the girl's partner would be the hero and not him. She explained that this guy does not need a couple, as he is already dead. He started making up stuff about losing his shape and needing a partner. The girl started talking about her motivation, and the guy seemed to start thinking. The hero hit the guy on the arm. He said that he didn't agree. Then he looked at Peck. He said that the guy should learn not only manners, but also self-restraint. Then they started to get incredibly angry at each other while the girl asked the guys to stop and not to start a fight. The woman said that teenagers have a lot of problems in their time, and snapped her fingers, after which there was a sound that stopped the fight. The two guys looked in that direction, and there was the guy's amulet flying in the air, and it was caught by the woman who called such amulets worthless. She explained that as long as he owned this building, she shouldn't say a word back to him. The others also entered the room. The girl remembered that she used to frequent this room with her teacher. The main character was incredibly surprised as in an instant they moved to another place, and even the monkey guy went quiet. The guy assumed it was all the woman's handiwork. The woman clapped her hands together and said the guys could go on. They didn't seem to understand what that meant at all. The girl didn't understand either, and the woman explained that she had prepared a separate room for them just for that purpose. The girl said she didn't want them to fight, and the woman explained that if they didn't fight, the problem wouldn't be solved. The girl was worried that the hero was injured, but the woman showed that there were no more wounds on the guy's arm, as the recovery had been successful. The woman forbade the monkey to use magic as it would be fair. The woman made a creepy face and explained that fighting is an emotion she personally sees. The monkey agreed and started to get up, but still decided to put forward a condition, namely if the hero loses he will leave. The protagonist decided to put forward his own conditions, that in case of his victory, the opponent for the rest of his life called him daddy. It seems that such a condition really hurt the guy. He got angry and wanted to say something as the protagonist went to attack with a blow with his fist. Peck looked very serious. At that time the guy did not understand whether they started or not. The protagonist had already tensed his second fist, which was noticed by the opponent, and managed to block Peck's blow, which did not help much, and he flew away a short distance. The protagonist said that he had never seen such fools. He doesn't have to warn every time before he strikes. The hero was standing, but his opponent was lying on the ground, which surprised the girl incredibly much, as she thought that the hero was weak. The woman said that the protagonist is not simple, because now he knows exactly what he is doing. The girl thought about it and decided to ask why the fight. The woman explained that this way they could look at the abilities of the new partner. Although she was really interested, but she was sure that the fighting ability of the hero is very weak compared to that guy. At that time, the protagonist appreciated the enemy's abilities, as he was easily able to block the attack. The enemy was surprised that he was not warned. He started shouting that the hero was a shameless scoundrel. At that time, Beck didn't seem to understand the guy's reaction at all, and the girls were shocked. The monkey started yelling about what a bastard the protagonist was. He was yelling about how a girl shouldn't get involved with such people, and the protagonist was getting closer. While the enemy was talking, he was ready to strike, but the guy reacted instantly and dodged. He said that it was too much even though he forgave him for the first time. Beck didn't let him finish and struck another blow, which was blocked. Beck threw a huge number of punches, and the enemy avoided each of them. The protagonist realized that the enemy has changed dramatically since the first blow. The enemy made a serious face and said that it was time to finish. He instantly approached the hero. Beck was surprised by such a phenomenal speed, but still he realized that he had to have time to block. Miraculously, he managed to stop one attack, while the enemy smiled and asked if the hero was sure that he succeeded. Beck didn't understand what he was saying, but instantly he felt a blow that easily broke through his defenses. The hero was thrown straight back into the pillar, the guy standing calmly in place. Beck was lying on the ground, and he began to shake with pain. The girl was very worried about the hero. At that time, the monkey realized that he overdid it. He had to show his power, because otherwise the main character would not calm down. He started to say that Beck is not able to survive in the ordinary world, and he should become an ordinary man. He was happy because he had won the argument. At that time, the woman asked if the girl was sure that this was the end. She said that she couldn't heal the hero's wound in just 24 hours. The girl seemed to realize that the guy had regeneration abilities. The woman began to explain that after a man spends all his strength, his true potential begins to manifest. It is under such words the main character and stood up with an awakened eye. Life energy, that without which no one lives, was very different from the energy of death, which was a pass to the afterlife. If the dead harmed the living, the death energy would penetrate the wound, making it take much longer to heal. The woman did not understand, because usually use techniques to remove the energy of death, and then the wound heals like a normal wound, but in the case of the hero was different, because he got rid of the negative energy, so his wounds and healed just in a flash eye. The woman was very interested in the hero's abilities. At that time, the guy apologized for overdoing it. He explained that it was likely that Beck wouldn't come to his senses anytime soon. The girl seemed to be very angry with the guy. At that time, footsteps were heard, and the woman announced that the fight was not over yet, as the protagonist was waiting for the fight to continue. The girl was pleased that Beck could stand on his feet, but the guy was terrified of the main character's stamina as he put all his strength into the punch. At that time, Beck did not think long. Went to attack the guy. He instantly struck, although the opponent managed to dodge, but it was given much more difficult because the attacks of the hero became much faster. He could not understand wherein Beck such speed. The guy decided to retreat, but the protagonist was instantly in front of him. He swung to attack, and the monkey was only surprised by such an incredible speed. The opponent had time to put his hands, but the blow was very powerful, which the girls were very surprised. They continued to be in the same position. The guy was shaking. It was very hard for him to block this blow. At that time, the main character's eye was burning bright red energy. He looked at his opponent with that eye. The guy continued to hold his hands up as Beck David charged at him. The opponent managed to throw the protagonist away. He immediately got into a fighting stance. He didn't know the reason, but the speed and power of Beck's blows increased many times. The guy was sure that if the protagonist continued like this, he would definitely lose. The woman forbade him to use magic, as it was one of the rules of the fight. The guy seemed to have forgotten all about it, and it was clear from his face that he was finished. At that time, the main character was using magic, which the guy complained about. Beck gave another strong blow, which threw the enemy far forward. The protagonist was surrounded by a dark aura. The guy asked Beck to stop. He said that he couldn't use magic, and since it wasn't fair, he offered to stop at one. At that time, the protagonist didn't even listen, and went straight for his opponent. The guy started yelling that he was giving up, and the protagonist stopped his fist right in front of his face. There was a pause. He continued to hold his fist, and smiled where the swarm called the monkey a good boy. True, after such an exertion, Peck immediately lost consciousness. But even so his eye, a little by little, emitted an aura. There was a huge explosion, and firefighters came to the scene. People were discussing how lucky they were that no one was there at the time of the explosion. They rejoiced that there were no casualties, while a man watched from the roof of the building. The rookie turned out to be a real talent. The guy was sitting on the roof thinking about something. At that time he felt that the memory seal had been broken. For this reason, he was waiting for his brother, who was going to find him very soon. One day in the life of a caretaker, he was tossing and turning on his bed all night and couldn't sleep. So it was time for the morning where the man realized that it was as if he hadn't slept all night. After 10 minutes, he was able to get up and go to the shower. He started to wash his face, and later the bell started to twitch hysterically. It was an inanimate object demanding food from a sleepy man. He gave him some plants he had grown at home and told him to eat slowly. It was time for breakfast, and he ate. Later he started packing and put on his mask. After that he took his umbrella and was finally ready to go out to work. Since the feeling of his co-workers also needed to be considered, he took off his mask. Inanimate paid attention to the beautiful butterfly, and the man's words that he would be gone for a while did not bother him at all. Suddenly the monster's reaction changed. He seemed to feel something. Then he started looking around, and a man came running up, who asked for some attention from his colleagues. After a while the mask began to exude energy. The man returned to the inanimate, which was crying. He did not understand what happened to the pet, but later realized that the monster thought he had lost his master, so he was upset. The man calmed the pet and took it with him. The girl stood and looked at the guys carefully. The main character asked to repeat those words again. The monkey mumbled something and Beck asked to repeat louder, so that it would be heard. The boy shouted that Beck was his daddy, which pleased the protagonist immensely. The girl was shocked at how the hero was taking advantage of his victory. The girl asked them to stop as it had been going on for over half an hour. The band seal placed on the guy would stop working in a couple minutes. He told her how angry the woman was. She addressed him by name and asked him if he was happy, if he was able to satisfy his ego. The guy also managed to hurt himself, but he denied it. The woman explained that she had given him the choice to fight or not, but it was up to her whether he was okay or not. They got to the same room, and the woman explained that they would have time to think about friendship. The girl asked if the guy's relationship had improved, but they didn't even seem to be thinking about it. They both admitted that their relationship couldn't get any better. They started glaring at each other again. The girl asked if the monkey was okay with the main character becoming her partner, and he reluctantly agreed. The girl seemed to be very happy with this outcome, while the monkey looked at her with a pensive look. The girl told him that it was time for them to start, and that she had brought the guys to help Pack understand her, and more specifically to understand the technique of weapons against monsters. She began to mix the talismans and explained that she would tell the principle of the technique, which interested the protagonists very much. Their abilities were called by many names in the past, but now they were simply called technicians. Technicians' skills surpassed not only the laws of nature, but also common sense. The girl told about the amulets that circled around her as an example. She also explained that the main components of the technique were sound and image. She said that in ancient times music and painting were created. From rhythms and sounds was born speech, and from painting was born patterns resembling words. These things could make a person's soul be heard, thanks to the sound of the soul and address and activated techniques. The guy missed that this was the case. He said that he was able to see the runes. At that time the girl explained that usually the older and simpler the phrase, the more power it has. The girl told of an example of her own where she uses an ancient mantra. Because of these words and knowing their meaning, she is able to create simple attack builds. The protagonist asked if he could learn such a technique. The girl did not know the answer to that question. She explained that such an ability could either be inherited or trained, but that was if it was suitable. She explained that given the hero's eye, he needs to think several times before he learns anything. She began to complain that there was no mentor, who she thought knew everything. At that time, the guy thought about his eye. It was noticed by the monkey. He did not understand why the hero asked such a question if he has such a powerful eye, able to make people call him daddy. He told the hero not to worry, as he was strong enough. Then the guy started yelling that could he use techniques, would be many times stronger than the protagonist. At that time, the girl seemed to remember something. She called the protagonist over and showed the backpack that the guy had dropped in the subway. The guy didn't understand. He couldn't believe that the protagonist was being bullied. At that time Beck was thinking that everything started with the subway. Suddenly he remembered something and asked about his classmate who was with him on the subway. He was worried because he had forgotten about such an important thing. But the girl explained that there was nothing wrong with his classmate. Finally the protagonist could calm down. The girl suggested the guy to dial his classmate and ask her himself. The girl dialed Mumu, who looked terrible. They started talking on the phone, and eventually Mumu called Uncle Wang, who said that he heard the guys talking and asked the name of the classmate. The hero called the name of Wen Xiao, who was now looking at the banner. Soon their school will have a holiday, and the girl thought about the flower that became the symbol of the holiday. A friend said that it was the best choice as a bodyman for the holiday. At that time, the girl looked with wide-open eyes at the huge monster of a flower, which she called amazing. At that time, the main character learned that the name of the classmate is not on the lists. Such a person simply does not exist. Since childhood, the girl loved the way she was treated by the people around her. She used to always smile at everyone. She had an incredibly kind grandmother neighbor at every meeting, which every time greeted and stroked her head, as well as she had a cheerful uncle courier, who helped her always, even when he was very busy. She understood that with people you cannot build one-sided relationships. If you are kind and gentle, you must necessarily share it with others. The girl loved this world with all her heart, but when she grew up, she realized that there was one more thing that people shared with pleasure. It was the most banal cruelty. At that time on the territory of the school, the man finished his conversation on the phone. He said that the documents for the enrollment of the hero in the school are ready. He said that so the guy can personally check if everything is okay with his classmate. Pak felt ashamed that he was demanding so much and apologized for it. The man explained that there was no need to worry, as it was their job. But the guy did not give a rest that on the tapes from the cameras there was not even a girl's cellulite. The hero recalled a moment from the past where the investigator explained that the guy's brother had died of a heart attack and eventually advised him to seek help from a psychiatrist. The hero seemed very angry and upset at the memory of this. The man explained that the guy should not worry, as at their work, strange things were commonplace. There seemed to be hope in the hero's eyes, and the man shared his hope that the girl was okay, and explained that their intervention would definitely not be unnecessary. He sincerely hoped that everything would go smoothly. At that time the authorization came on his phone, and he said that they could all go inside together. At that time, Monkey teased that once they got permission, Pak chickened out. They started to get back together. From behind the protagonist, he was approached by a girl who was wondering what the protagonist was doing here. Everyone was surprised by her appearance. At that time the guy recognized his classmate. she expressed her joy that the main character was okay. She said that she was very worried because she couldn't even contact Peck. She was very happy that she was able to calm down, and the hero noticed that the anonymous that stuck to her was missing. At that time, the monkey told the hero to look closely at the girl's right arm. It showed signs of death. Peck inquired what was wrong with the girl's hand, and was amazed at what he noticed. The girl explained that since yesterday's cleaning, her arm had started to hurt, even though the doctor said it was fine. The guy asked her to let him see it. She showed him her hand, saying that it looked pretty creepy. The reaction of the protagonist and his new friend was shocking. The girl explained herself. She had taken a bunch of tests, and the pain seemed to be gone. The man introduced himself and said he worked at the hospital. He explained that the girl could come any time after noon. The guys explained that the uncle would definitely be able to treat her. At that time, the girl explained that today was a holiday at school, and she would definitely need to warn the teachers. The monkey suggested that the girl should text, but she shouted that she shouldn't do that. She explained that such things should be told in person, and in general she has other things to do. The man said that they also have things to do at school. The girl offered her help, and together they went to the administration. The hero didn't know where the administration was in the school, since he hadn't been here long. Beck assumed that the girl wanted to protect him from bad memories, so she volunteered to help. As soon as they started to cross the threshold, everyone had a feeling. Monkey complained that they were going to have to work. The man asked if the girl was feeling it, and the girl said yes. At that time, the hero's classmates said they were almost there. The hero asked if Xiao felt anything, but she thought it was a party and said that the guys would love it. Throughout the school spread threads from the body of the monster. The man said that something they were able to find out, namely that in this place did not catch the connection and contact with the outside world is impossible. The second was that all the entrances were blocked, and although it was easy to enter this space, but it was almost impossible to get out. Because of the holiday, most likely all the students and staff had been trapped for a long time. The man also paid attention to the classmate and said that they should think about the strange veil on her arm. They should keep a close eye on her and find the cause of the anomaly in the school. At that time, the girl and her classmate were having a nice conversation. At that time, the monkey was not at all interested in looking in their direction. He didn't seem to be happy that the girls were so friendly. Finally, after a long dialogue, they said goodbye. The girl explained that, as they had expected for her classmate, nothing had changed at school. Everything around her was the usual festive atmosphere. The man said that they would have to split up, but it was very risky because they did not have enough information. He announced that he would go with the hero and the girl with the monkey and gave clear commands. He explained that the situation was critical and that in case of danger the guys would defend themselves with all their might. The guy did not understand why they separated. At that time the girl said that she would wait for her classmate. The main character joked with the guy, who was called Sweet, and hit him on the leg, from which he began to squirm in pain, and the hero said that the guy is difficult to move. A classmate offered to take the guy to the nurse's station, but the hero refused. At that time the monkey was just in anger. The girl turned to the protagonist. Later she thought about whether to tell her. After a little thought she said that they will still see each other and called him a partner. The protagonist didn't seem to mind such words at all. The classmate talked about how their school was serious about preparation, and everyone, including teachers and students, were now working. The man compared the feeling when the horses entered this school with what they felt near a huge house. The guy seemed to really get that the situations were similar, but the hero said they weren't. The man only hoped that this place wasn't a nest. It seemed like Beck didn't know what a nest was. At that time a classmate said that they were almost there and pointed to the far door. At that time, other guys appeared and questioned the girl about whether she had done what she was supposed to do. The hero and the man seemed to react immediately. The girl said that she hadn't finished her errand and that she would have to rest in the afternoon. The guys started talking about how this was not allowed since today was an important group class. They said that only the girl would be absent, and they didn't know what to do. She explained that she would like to attend, but she had reasons. This answer didn't seem to please the guys at all. They touched her, and the atmosphere around her instantly changed. The guys were worried about the girl. She was surprised and said she felt fine. They suggested that she go to the classroom to calm down. She agreed to go to the classroom, but heard the voice of the hero asking where she was going. She explained that she was going to class with her classmates and would be back soon. The guy didn't seem happy at all, as there were two inanimate monsters standing near her. The monster grabbed the girl's arm and started pulling her along. The protagonist rushed to the rescue, but from the floor began to appear something. In time to notice, this man threw Peck with his hand. Then in that place there was a wall, and the hero was thrown away. The guy was worried if the man was all right. He explained that he was fine and ordered the hero to catch up with his classmate. The guy rushed from his seat towards the girl, while the man found himself in a real trap. Around him monsters began to appear. He said that it would be super if he could at least somehow see the enemies. At that time, the guy complained that a lot of bugs had arrived in his nest, which annoyed him. At that time a girl was watching the picture. The guy asked what was wrong, but she said that everything was fine and they should head to the gym. At that time the protagonist ran after the classmate. He ran with all his might and at top speed down the stairs, remembering the man's words that they should keep a closer eye on the classmate, as well as he remembered her strange behavior, thinking about the reason why she did that. He couldn't understand what was so important. At that time the girl asked her classmates to wait, because they were walking too fast and she had dropped her bag. They explained to her that they wanted to see her as soon as possible. Especially one girl, a classmate, wondered who they were talking about and started to think about it, because her arm was hurting incredibly badly. Finally they arrived at the place, and the girl's arm was released. The classmate announced that the girl had finally arrived. The other classmates didn't react at first, but later they were happy that Xiao had finally arrived. She was happy that everyone was so friendly, but still she felt as if something was wrong. One of the girls said that Xiao would be scared if she was pressured like that. She started to approach the girl, and she couldn't believe her eyes. The image of Liang Xian appeared in front of her. She explained to the girl, and she said that she was incredibly happy to be in the same class together again. She said that there was no need to worry about anything else, because they would be able to be together again. She also said that they would be able to live a happy and fulfilling life. But Xiao seemed to realize, and shoved her friend away, shouting the word no. The friend didn't realize what was wrong. Everything was fine after all. The friend said that their whole class is friendly, and everyone helps each other. She said that's what she and Xiao wanted. She said she didn't, because her friend had been dead for a long time. The friend didn't understand what this was about and asked if the girl was feeling normal. Xiao explained that her friend had been dead for a long time. She explained that the girl could see her, feel her, hear her. Xiao realized that she was hallucinating, but her friend said that she couldn't be dead because she was actually more alive than the living. Xiao shouted that she could forget anything but that. The friend seemed to change her face and asked if that was the reason Xiao would leave her. She said she wasn't going to leave anyone, but the friend turned into a monster and said Xiao would become like them. Xiao was incredibly frightened by this, and the monster started to attack, but right before the clash, the main character appeared and was able to block the attack with a barrier. The girl was surprised to see the guy. In the past, the girl told the protagonist that although he is not able to learn, but since they are partners, she allowed him to get the black talisman and explained how. The protagonist said the word gathering, and the talismans began to combine to create a blade. The girl allowed him to borrow her spell. At that time all humans turned into monsters, The protagonist realized that they were the reason for everything that was happening. In the past, the girl wrote her name on the blackboard. The teacher asked her to introduce herself. Her classmates were waiting for it, and she was called Lin Xian, and although she entered a little late, she really hoped to make friends. She wanted to enjoy the best period of their lives together with everyone. At first, Xiao was surprised by the scar on the girl's face. The girl appeared very open. She actually felt with all her heart how beautiful Lin was. In real time, the monster began to make a huge number of attacks. The protagonist swung and made a strong blow with his sword, which cut off all the sprouts. The guy handled such an attack, and looking at the monster assumed that he felt no pain. Even cutting these vines, they grew back. The protagonist understood that if he continued to look for gaps in the defense of these flowers, the battle will be very long. As the hero fought against the plant monsters, one of them approached his face and asked to be saved. After that it started to fall, and the others also fell to the ground. The protagonist asked if Xiao could move, and after hearing the answer he asked the girl to get ready. After the command, they burst out of their seats and started to run away quickly. At that time, a huge monster with the face of Zhao's girlfriend advanced behind them and started running after them. The protagonist thought about whether he should use that thing. The guy looked at the staircase landing and seemed to have an idea. He grabbed his blade and charged it with lightning. He swung it. He attacked with talismans. Then a barrier appeared, which held back the monster. It seemed that he was unable to break through it. He tried to repeatedly strike, but it was useless. Watching all this, the protagonist joked that the monster was so weak that it couldn't even break the base barrier. It seemed to have succeeded in provoking the inanimate, then it squealed and headed towards the barrier, while the protagonist removed the defense with a smile on his face. After that, the monster flew past the protagonist and Xiao at a tremendous speed, and flew out of the school right into the street. The protagonist realized that the monster didn't die from falling from the third floor. Also, the guys seemed to notice something. They moved to one of the rooms where the hero was intending to stay for a short period of time. The girl didn't understand why the guy brought the monster here. He explained that he took the monster to check something. After the hero started to remove the suckers, he noticed that there was a living person underneath. Xiao was crying since the guy was her classmate. At that time, he started to wake up, and after he regained consciousness, he started screaming to keep the monster away from him. The main character assumed that the guy was conscious the whole time. He recalled the moment where he was asked for help. He began to explain that he couldn't control himself, and asked if the hero could save him. He talked about how they had done nothing to the demon, but the girl interrupted, because those words were nonsense. Exactly half a year ago, Lin called the school library very cool. She said hello to Xiao, and told her that she was her new roommate. She also immediately began to enthusiastically praise the book that the girl had. Suddenly, she realized how open she was, and apologized for getting too carried away. Suddenly her reaction changed. Xiao told the girl that she actually really wanted to be friends with her. She explained that she had been in a car accident at the beginning of the summer vacation, and that the scar was the result of a blow to her head, which even caused a memory lapse. Xiao was surprised, as it all sounded very serious. The girl had gotten top marks in the exam, and was said to have done very well in all subjects. But after the scar, Xiao was worried that it would affect her studies. Xiao said not to worry and smiled, and said she didn't want to be sad about such a small thing. She smiled and said that she wasn't really that easy to break. At that time, Xiao realized the more she looked at Lin, the more she admired her. She dreamed of becoming like her. Since the girl didn't hide the origin of her scar, a little later it became known to everyone. But after the exams became noticeable changes, Lin's grades fell sharply. At first everyone discussed it very strongly, but later everyone decided that now they can safely destroy the girl. In a school where grades meant everything, Even that was enough to start blooming poisonous flowers. The girls were discussing how annoying Lin was, and how stupid and ugly she was because of her scar. Xiao was worried about Lin, who heard all this. She, however, smiled and said she would come back a little later. The next day, Lin Wadey came to school covering her scar. Xiao thought the girl did it to fit in better in class. Later, she realized how fatal a mistake it was. As if the king of beasts had been given a wound that immediately began to stink, all the classmates immediately realized that the girl had been weak. After a while, the verbal abuse turned physical. It all came to the point that at one point Lin broke down and did not come to school. And a week later the news broke that the girl had committed suicide not far from home. The principal yelled at the teacher because of this incident. He said that they need to deal with the consequences as soon as possible. He even said that they were very lucky that the girl didn't die on school grounds. The girl was screaming about how they were all murderers, absolutely the whole class. The boy said that it was Lin's choice, not theirs. At that time the Cheroi put his sword to the boy's head. He told the boy to shut up because in his experience the girls cared about the class. The girl didn't understand what the hero was talking about. She remembered the moment when he said that good people shouldn't blame themselves, and said that it was her fault for not being kind. She said that she came to talk to him to make up for it. The first thing that came to her mind after Lin was bullied was that she didn't want to be in the same situation. Suddenly the person who started it all appeared and said that it would not be so boring, because there was an interesting person. The hero did not realize what this person right in front of him. But suddenly his eye began to work, and the guy instantly closed it. The fact that the eye activated meant only one thing: the guy right in front of Peck is a monster. The enemy started smiling a creepy smile. At that time the team of girls arrived before the entrance to the gym. After opening the doors, they were incredibly surprised, as they saw a huge number of students, who were covered in vines. Absolutely all the people in that room were covered in vines. The guy said it was the first time he had ever seen energy being absorbed in such volumes. The guy explained that if they could do it quickly, there would be a chance to save the guys. He asked the girl if everything was all right. She said that the hero had used her technique and was worried. She realized that her uncle couldn't help the protagonist for some reason. She was sure that now Peck had to rely on his own strength. The guy said the girl should go to the main character while he's figuring it out. He said not to worry about him and just trust him. He's not weak. She seemed happy about the opportunity and started to leave, saying that she would let the others know about the situation. At the time the guy said goodbye to her, a monster appeared and realized why the guy had said goodbye to a girl who didn't notice him. He talked about how the girl was completely useless, which made the guy very angry. He didn't understand what the monster in front was, because even the bell didn't react. The guy thought deeply that the monster smelled of inanimate energy, but it looked like a human and could talk. The guy seemed to be close to a solution, and the enemy assumed that he understood everything. The guy smiled and charged his body with lightning, naming the identity of the enemy. Beck decided to ask the enemy if he was inanimate. The boy's classmate didn't understand who he was talking to, but the enemy said that given the narrowness of the hero's mind, he was. Suddenly, he noticed something. He said that every time he was seen by the caretakers, he was asked the same question, and he didn't understand what was wrong with the protagonist's face, which was smiling. At that time Beck realized that he was seeing a monster, who was a man. He realized that he was alive but dead at the same time. Now the protagonist was sure that his brother had become the same monster. Now the hero had the shortest way to his revenge. The enemy said that in any case the protagonist was not interesting to him. But suddenly his face lost its calmness as Beck instantly attacked. The enemy remained unfazed after dodging it, at which time the protagonist asked why he wanted Xiao. The protagonist didn't care what kind of monster it was. His main goal was to protect the guys. He wanted to deal with the enemy and extract the information he needed. Behind the guy's back, a monster appeared. laughing from the fact that the hero had already decided that he had won. Beck instantly reacted and tried to turn around, but the hand of the enemy was already near his head. The monster said that everything will be different and advised the hero not to make illusions attacked, after which the guy broke through the wall with his body and crashed into the fence. Beck coughed blood from his wounds. Everything around him was quite gloomy. The enemy was getting closer, saying that the guy shouldn't have gotten in the wrong place. The monster also complained that it was dirty now. He looked at the protagonist and said that lately the level of the caretakers and the dead was terrible. At that time the main character's talisman started to collapse. He was amazed at that. At that time a second attack started to fly. After that, Peck's neck was grabbed and the guy was thrown to the ground. The enemy put his foot to Peck's head and called the hero a real weakling and told him that it was very boring. The monster explained that always when the bugs interfere, the desire to play is lost. The hero did not understand what toy the enemy was talking about, and he explained that the girl, who was pursued by an inanimate, it was interesting to watch her in his opinion. He began to make sounds and spread his arms around, saying that things are like that. The protagonist realized that the inanimate on Zhao's body was Liang. The enemy explained that everyone who came out of the afterlife was once a human. Exactly 8 years ago, a girl yelled at a guy who ran away. She promised to beat him for it. While she was looking for him, he came out of the bushes and thought about how evil his sister was. He'd better hide further. Suddenly the guy heard a sound. When he turned that way, he saw a girl feeding a pigeon. It was a little girl looking sad, empathizing with the bird. The guy couldn't look away, and after thinking for a while, he decided to say hello. He kept talking to the girl, who didn't pay any attention to him at all. He thought about the fact that the girl was like a doll who could not speak. The boy also paid attention to his neck, which looked very painful. After 7 years, he noticed that the girl had an earring on her ear, and she began to talk enthusiastically about her earring. The girl went on to say that it was too early to pierce their ears, and that it wasn't real, but the guy was already running away. When the girl turned around, he was gone. He came back a while later with a pierced ear. She looked at him like he was a complete idiot. The guy explained that it was an ear piercing. The girl asked him if his ear hurt a lot. The guy was quiet for a while and admitted that it hurt terribly. The girl did not understand why the guy did it. He explained that they are a gang and do everything together. The girl asked if the guy's family knew about it, but the guy turned pale, because at home, he would be finished when his parents saw it. The girl decided to get her ear pierced the other day. The protagonist asked if all those monsters are the souls of living people. The enemy only laughed at the hero's surprise. Beck realized that all his talismans were broken, and he could not use them anymore. The guy realized that he needed to calm down and stall for time. The enemy revealed the protagonist's plan. The guy reacted sharply to such arguments. The monster explained that the caretaker and the girl do not even see him, and they cannot really help. At that time the look of the protagonist changed. He began to smile like a real psycho. The guy explained that this is not necessary, and with the words that he himself can destroy the enemy as I awakened. Then the protagonist grabbed the enemy's leg, and a red aura began to be released. The enemy could not understand what it was, just a feeling. At that time, the girl activated her talisman. She activated her attack and sent a blow directly at the enemy. He was able to react in time to block the sudden attack from the girl. The monster was surprised that the girl could see him. She went behind his back and told him that she could. She saw the enemy very clearly. The girl struck a blow that cut off the monster's arm. After the attack, she stepped back a little and prepared for the next expression. At that time, blood began to drip from the monster's arm. He admitted that he should not have underestimated the girl. The partner asked how the protagonist was, and he said he was fine. The guy also apologized for breaking the girl's amulets. The protagonist's eye was fully awakened, which had an incredible effect on the enemy. He immediately started talking about Peck's eye. They didn't understand what the enemy was talking about, but he started laughing with all his might. He seemed to realize something. The monster admitted that the thing he was doing that was right in front of his nose. After saying that, the monster's arm started to regenerate, which surprised the team. The enemy's arm instantly regenerated. He said that he changed his mind, and to celebrate the good mood he decided to finally create a nest. At the time, the protagonist was worried about his classmate, but instantly the space around changed. The enemy said that it was time for them to start. After that, numerous plants began to appear around the guys. The enemy explained that this area would be cut off from the real world, and everyone here would be stuck here forever. The protagonist did not understand what the enemy wanted to do, but he smiled and confessed that he just wanted to fulfill a wish. It turned out that he had decided to fulfill Zhao's true wish. The girl heard others talking about her friend's death. People complained that the girl was a fragile toy. After that, people began to forget that a girl like Lin existed. The girl was evil. How dare they act like that when they are murderers? The girl began to ask a lot of unanswered questions. In her ear, the girl told her to see the future for herself. A second person advised her to find out the answer in her heart. Then the girl started to wake up and found herself at some banquet. One girl was talking to Xiao, which allowed her to wake up. It turned out to be a class reunion. The girl said she was going to go have fun. They started talking nicely with their classmates. The others were also having a good conversation. At that time, the girl stood alone and thought that each of her classmates had a life they had worked for, but not Lin. After that, the girl began to be consumed by anger. She shouted for everyone to pay attention to her, and then asked if the guys remembered Lin. The others stood silently at first, but later one guy remembered, so they all started to say how poor the girl was, a victim of an accident. They said how sorry they were, but the girl was not satisfied with this answer, because the obvious answer was that these people were the ones responsible for Lin's death. Xiao shouted to everyone that they were all to blame for her friend's death. In the end, the classmates just pretended not to understand what the girl was talking about. After Xiao's eyes began to look despairing, the second person hugged the original and said that the strongest tool of people is forgetfulness. In the end, the girl couldn't even prove the guilt of these people. The second person said that to these people, the dead meant nothing. After something like that, Xiao said that they all belonged in hell. She recalled her friend's words about the best class she wanted. Then the girl said that they all, even including her, would pay for the girl's death with their lives. After that, everything around began to be covered with aura. The enemy began to smile and change his appearance to the original. After full, everything around began to be covered with black threads. The girl set up a barrier and blocked numerous attacks. They together with the hero could not move under their pressure. The protagonist remembered the words of the man who hoped that it was not a nest, and the words of the enemy who said that it was time to create a nest. Beck asked what a nest was, and the girl replied that it was a gap created in the world of the living. After the area is created, the place will go to the world of the dead, where it will become a paradise for monsters. If a person went to such a place, they would definitely not be able to return back. The girl explained that to create a nest you need a support, and to destroy the nest you need to kill the support. She also added that only a living person can be a support. The girl explained to the protagonist that they would have to kill Xiao if they wanted to get out. The guy didn't seem to want to believe it. He said he couldn't do that. He explained that he wouldn't sacrifice anyone and would save everyone. The girl smiled and admitted that she actually thought so herself. She also said that no one should be sacrificed for the sake of others. She said that there should definitely be another way. The monster was heard shouting and enthusiastically praising the spectacle going on around him. He said that he adored that very moment when his heart was breaking. At that time, the girl seemed to have turned into a monster. She began to emit a horrible aura filling everything around her. The enemy realized that there was only a little bit of time left. All that was left was to wait for the life energy to merge with the anger. The enemy would have been happy if he hadn't been hindered by the stupid cockroaches. The girl tried to attack the monster, but couldn't break through its defenses. The enemy reminded the girl that her attacks didn't work on him. The girl said that the enemy didn't need to think about it, and would understand later. The girl continued her barrage of attacks while the enemy retreated. The protagonist came to the battle scene. He remembered the girl's words. The girl said that she would delay the enemy, while the hero would have to wake the girl up. The girl said that the hero shouldn't let the enemy do anything to Xiao. At that time, the guy was almost at his goal. Suddenly his view changed as Beck was attacked by the enemy. The hero found himself surrounded by monsters. The guy assumed that these creatures had gathered together because of the nest. At that time, the enemies had already prepared to attack. The guy wasn't going to stand still either, and filled his fists with aura. The hero decided to reignite the fight. At that time, Lin intervened. She asked for some time to talk to the hero. The guy recognized Lin and asked if it was really her. Then the girl turned in his direction and approached the hero and thanked him, because by looking into his eyes, she was able to get back some of her memories. The girl took the hero by the hand and offered him to go. The protagonist began to worry, because if the inanimate touches him, the situation with the injury will be repeated. The girl explained that this place was the abyss between life and death. Here they will not be prevented from talking. She held the hero's hand and said that it was much better this way. The girl said that she knew how to save Xiao. In fact, the enemy planted a seed in her hand and began to influence her to hate the people around her. It turned out as long as the family was in her hand, her emotions would continue to obey the enemy. The girl sincerely asked the protagonist to pull out that seed for her. She begged to save her friend. Recalling a conversation in the past in the library, the girls were discussing a world of only goodness. The girl complained that everyone around her didn't believe in such a world. The friend suggested that the girl was infantilized, but she also said that it was strange. She started to think about the meaning of the fact that they are trying to impose an ideal world and later they face a cruel reality. The girl pondered about the best way to raise children and came to the conclusion that the most important thing is smoothness. Talk about how to live a better and easier life. She asked Xiao's opinion about this thought, but also Lin realized that perhaps it was her friend's vision of the world that she liked the most. The protagonist asked how exactly he could get the family out. She explained that she didn't really know herself, and she only had a hunch that thanks to the protagonist's eye everything would work out. The guy seemed to think about it. The girl explained that if the hero removes the family, she will be able to wake up the girl. After something like that, the girl would no longer be a support, and the nest would not start. She said that this was how the hero would manage to save everyone, though she admitted that she would be very much okay if all those bastards died. She said that she was not a saint, so she would be happy to give some punishment to the guys, but at the same time, she didn't want to drag her friend into it. She also said that she felt guilty because it was not only Zhao's fault, but also hers. The protagonist asked what the girl meant. At that time the girl was fighting with the enemy. She made another strike, but this time she managed to break through the enemy's defense. The enemy began to notice that each blow of the girl was stronger than the previous one. He could not understand how this scary girl, at that time a crack appeared in the ground, because of which the girl had to interrupt her attack and retreat. The enemy asked if the girl had to pay attention to him only. He said that the hero was caught, although he did not even have time to approach the pillar. The girl thought about the guy. The enemy also pointed to the cloud of anger and said that they would soon join. Moments before the catastrophe would happen, the enemy already considered himself the winner. There was a noise, and the monster began to laugh happily. After a while his reaction changed to shock, because everything around him began to collapse. The nest that he had created by putting such a huge effort was collapsing. It was his uncle, who said that he had spent a lot of effort to destroy it. The girl was very happy to see her uncle all right. The enemy began to get angry, and said that he would definitely not ignore such a thing. Then the protagonist touched the girl's hand. It seemed that the enemy felt something. He instantly moved his gaze to the place where the hero was, and there he saw a picture where the guy was trying to remove the parasite in the girl's body. The hero remembered the girl's words that she was racked with guilt for becoming a monster and sucking the energy of her co-workers. She hoped that it would all be over soon, so she asked the hero to help, and he grabbed the flower with his hand and started pulling and pulling with all his might. He watched carefully and seemed to succeed. The protagonist was sure that he would be able to destroy the flower, and he did. After that, the nest itself began to collapse. The girl was no longer under the control of the sapling, and after the energy receded, she began to fall. The girl was caught by her dead friend. She thanked Xiao. She thanked the girl for everything she did, for not forgetting and getting angry when someone talked about her and more. The girl was crying in her mind. She was begging for help, and suddenly, she heard a familiar voice behind her asking why she was crying. The girl told the reason why she was crying, and the Ling offered to keep her company. They began to talk sweetly. The Lingya gave the girl a rabbit, and told her that she would never be alone again. She confessed that she had come to visit her friend as she was leaving, and wanted to say goodbye. The girl began to praise her new friend, and said that she could never be the same. The friend said that the girl can change at any moment. She was surprised that the friend knew her name. Then the world began to fall apart, and the time was right. Then the friend pushed the girl right into the light. At the end, she said that Xiao was braver than she thought. The girl had time to ask about the scar as the memories started to appear, and smiling, her friend showed 2 fingers and said it looked good on her. Xiao started crying with joy and grief. At that time in the real world, the hero called out to the girl. She woke up, to which the guy was incredibly happy. The barrier of the school began to crack, after which the sky became normal color, and it was actually already dark. The protagonist reflected on the fact that they were able to provide the opening of the nest. The girl shouted to the hero to be careful. The guy was able to turn around, but immediately he was attacked by an enemy that had incredible speed. The hero would not have seen to defend himself, but the enemy only said that he did not want broken toys. The enemy also said that the eye does not belong to the hero, and sooner or later he will come back to get it. After that, the hero fell to the ground. When this incident was over, the disciples got rid of the vines. At that time, the man was surprised that it really happened. The uncle said that he had already reported everything, and it would all be dealt with soon. The protagonist said that as soon as he talked to Xiao, he found out that when he asked about Lin, she couldn't remember her friend. The protagonist said that the girl had forgotten everything related to Lin. The man seemed to think deeply. The man said that it was unlikely to be memory lamentation, as it was an incredibly rare gift. The protagonist asked if a monster could do that, and the man said that it was never mentioned in the inquiries. The man assumed that Lin wanted the best for the girl, so she decided to erase her memory. The hero seemed a little upset, but the man said that after the hero became part of the mare, then he could find the answer to his question. The man said that the protagonist should definitely remember his goal, which surprised the guy. Their dialogue was interrupted by the shout of a girl who greeted them. She announced the news. The people who were in the gym turned out to be alive. Such news pleased the hero and the man. At that time, one schoolboy appeared, who began to get incredibly angry, and the others too. He began to yell at the girl, who wanted to kill them unlike the monster. They tried to calm him down, but he didn't want to calm down at all. Eventually, everyone started to get angry at Xiao, while the girl was trying to protect her at the same time. The girl said that the strange thing was that she wasn't panicking or scared. She just thought everything around her was funny. The main character seemed to be in a rage, but he was stopped by a man. The man started telling all the students that their lives had been eaten People didn't seem to really understand what the man was saying, but the man started explaining that everything he said was true, and now the guy's life expectancy would be reduced. The people started to get scared and kept silent about curing them. The man explained that there was no cure and everyone wanted to know how much time they had left, but the uncle said that he would not tell them, because he wanted these people to live in fear of their death all their lives, even when their memory was gone, but the fear would not go away. He explained that it was atonement for the sins of these people. The hero asked if the man was telling the truth, and the man explained that since the nest had not been opened, all the energy had gone back into their bodies, so it was a lie. The man said that all they could do was scare the boys. The protagonist thought that it was better than some orders or explanations. The man also said that the prospector would be here soon. It was already evening in the city. In one of the alleys a moth was beating on a lantern, and it fell on the palm of one man's hand. Behind his back a servant appeared, who wanted to tell the news. The hero's brother asked what was wrong, and the servant told him that the nest had not been created because of the caretaker's interference. The boy didn't seem at all worried about it. He was sure that he would have a chance, and it was only a matter of time.